Overseeing daily operations of Clermont County's government is the responsibility of 3 commissioners chosen by voters. Those voters were only supposed to pick 2 of the seats this fall, but then incumbent Republican Archie Wilson resigned after being convicted in Kenton County of drug possession and soliciting prostitutes. The seat was taken by GOP appointee David Ubel, who now faces Democrat Len Harding for the right to fill the unexpired term through the end of 2014. Harding is a semi-retired technical and specifications writer for businesses. This is his first time running for political office.
I have taken a look at the 2013 proposed county budget and noticed a significant increase in spending. In today's tough economic times, how do you plan to pay for that?
Well, the planning is somewhat set askew by the continuing recession. Revenues have fallen, and this is a problem. So what happens is that you go back through the budget and you do what you can to skin out the things that look like they're a little bit on the excess side, but you also look for things that you can hopefully either put off or delay for a while. It is an issue that has bothered all local governments, and part of it is the fact the state of Ohio has cut way back on its funding for local governments. So as we have to pick up the pieces, as it were, we wind up with more money committed than we have actually coming in. And it is a job, and one of the things that a commissioner has to do is make sure that vital things are not cut, but now you get into judgment calls as to what's vital and what's not. But I would say fire, police, basic services, infrastructure upkeep, those are all untouchables. Things that might be touchable are local improvements, local roadway improvements. We have to keep our signage up for safety, but other signs maybe not. So it's a go as you can and change as you might. And you always hope that the revenue will hit on the uptick.
We know that there's a drug problem here in Clermont County, especially with meth and heroin. What would you propose to do to provide treatment for these individuals rather than having them incarcerated indefinitely?
Well, I think that you've hit on the magic formula here, and that is treatment always works better over the long run than does punishment. When you're punishing people for drugs, you're still having to pay for their upkeep. You have to pay for so much, and they come out no better off, and sometimes a lot more resentful than when they went in. The need to address the drug problem is very important, and not only is it important for the meth, the heroin, the hard drugs, it's important that we talk to people, the young people, and tell them straight out that this is not an answer to whatever's going on. I understand that times can be tough and the frustration level can be high, but that's not a good reason to turn to drugs. That's kind of say no to drugs, and I do understand that. But it is an issue that you have to start young with getting the children understanding what drugs do and how drugs can make you feel, but that drugs are ultimately not an answer. Another issue I find very important is that we have a lot of people returning from the service who have drug problems. And these people who have sacrificed for us come back with needs. And sticking them in jail is not only pointless, but to me it's heartless. So I would like to see expansion of drug. There are drug courts that are being tried hither, thither, and yon, and I think that is a good path to go on. Also, we've talked about perhaps having veterans courts, and those are ideal testing ground to see a better way to handle drugs. We've had alcohol with us for thousands of years, and we've learned how to cope with people who go off the rails with alcohol, and we're only learning how to cope with people who go off the rails with these harder drugs. But it is something that all societies have a problem with. We just have to find a humane and rational way to deal with it that doesn't break the bank while we're at it. And I agree with you, chasing down people and putting them in jail for a long time is only a temporary solution to a very long-term problem. I really can't think of much else to say other than it is important. It's at the top of my list of things to do, and it does touch an area that I care very much about, and that's veterans.
Clermont County is currently under quarantine due to an infestation of the Asian longhorn beetle. The USDA's preferred eradication strategy calls for the removal and destruction of 70% of all trees, even though less than 1% of these trees are actually infested. As a commissioner, would you support the county pursuing legal action to prevent the USDA from destroying healthy trees?
That's a tough one, and for a moment I'm thinking yes, and then for a moment I'm thinking no. I would support asking them to delay because that is literally shooting a fly with a cannon. And it's a very drastic maneuver. On the other hand, I understand their need to get a hold of these things. Their solution is what I would call a low manpower solution. That is, you spend a whole lot of money up front tearing down all of these trees in the hopes that you've killed them all, killed all the beetles. On the other hand, the preferred method, as far as I'm concerned, is intensely labor specific. You have to go to each tree and look at it. So I understand their position, and I would have to tell you honestly, we have to look at practical methods that we have to do the same job with more attention to protecting the trees. And as I sit here in front of you, I am not sure that I have an immediate answer to that, but it is something that pains me greatly, is to see all of these wonderful old trees taken out because of these beetles. There has to be a better way, but until we spend the time and the money to look and see what we can do, can we stop them with, okay, maybe a little more expenditure, a little more volunteers from people getting out and trying to save their trees. I understand, as I say, I understand what the government is doing, the federal government, because they are looking for their best expenditure and best result. Their result is, of course, to get rid of the beetle, and if they have to get rid of all of the trees, that's how they will do it. There are better ways, but are there ways we can afford? I don't know. I do think we have attorneys who are smart enough to get stays and delays while we work this out. I'm not so sure that I think the federal government actually wants to come in here and they're looking forward to killing all our trees. I think they're looking forward to us finding ways to do a better job on our own so they don't have to pay for it. But one way or another, they will stop these beetles, and we have to help. I hope that answers your question. I kind of hate to take the federal government to task because, boy, that's a fool's bet right there. So we would have to sit down and talk further to make sure I understand exactly what it is you're wanting the commissioners to do. Thank you.
Here in Clermont County, 1 of every 10 residents is now living below poverty level. Here at UC Clermont College, we have a community garden that to date has produced over 1,000 pounds of fresh produce to give to our families in need. If you are elected county commissioner, what will you bring to the table?
Well, thank you for asking that question. I feel like that is one of the nicest questions I've ever had. I am a strong advocate of gardening. I am an organic gardener myself. I do believe very much that gardening is an answer. I grew up during the, the Korean War when we still had shortages, and everyone had a garden. And in fact, in the United States, starting that I know of, all of our wars, people just gardened and gardened and gardened because that's where the best food comes. I would support any number of measures to work with other organizations, to include UC, to start gardens, to train gardening. You can do, in fact, I do not remember the man's name, but I saw a wonderful presentation at Xavier, it's been about almost a year ago, where he talked about gardening in the inner city. Gardening is an answer. It is a very good answer. We don't get enough good fruits and vegetables as is. In fact, I do think that one of the things you use to fight poverty is to get people to feed themselves for less money by getting them a garden. I also think that there is a tremendous psychological lift from working in the garden. I get one, and most of the gardeners I know, when I talk with them, they feel the same way. Working with the soil is just absolutely wonderful. And when I was first working as a greenie with green architecture, that was one of the things we thought about doing. There are so many things you can do, for instance, with tires. Tires are inert for all intents and purposes. You grind them up, and they can become, in place of gravel, they can become a filler to break up clay soil we have all over Clermont County here. So there are any number of ways to approach the gardening issue, the food issue, the poverty issue, all through teaching people how to garden, teaching them how to prepare foods correctly, and teaching them to, in fact, choose the right things to eat. So that would be something I would very much be interested in working with. Thank you.
Clermont County is traditionally a veteran-friendly and patriotic county. With so many young men and women coming back from active military service and so many other veterans in the county being unemployed, what is your commitment to helping these young men and women as they transition back into civilian life?
Well, I'm a veteran, and I have a great deal of sympathy for that. When I used to teach, I would take out special time to work with veterans. It is something, these young men and women join the military. They are, in fact, on call to risk their lives at our necessity. And so there's almost not too much that we can do for them. We owe them a lot, and I think that the Clermont County will continue to support veterans and support programs for veterans. As I addressed the first question, what do we do with the money? Well, one of the things we do is we make sure our veterans are taken care of, as well as our infrastructure and our basic services. The other thing we do is we just work with the veterans to make sure that if they have problems, that we help them with those problems. One of the other things that we're having that it's new to society is a great many of these people coming back from Iraq and Afghanistan have concussion injuries. We're not accustomed to all of this concussion damage, and we don't quite know how to deal with it, because concussed people also can act strange, belligerent, and a number of other things, and it comes out as a mental issue. So we have to stretch ourselves to meet them, because they've already made the sacrifice and they have a life to live, and it should not be that you serve your country and give up a chance at a good job, a chance at a drug-free life, or a chance at an injury-free life. They have handicaps, and we will work with that. My commitment to veterans is high and remains so.
The Eastern Corridor project has been designed to help eliminate and reduce traffic congestion in the Route 32 Eastgate area. Two questions. One, do you support this project? And two, what kind of assurances can you give homeowners and business owners that they're going to be treated fairly by the state as far as land acquisition and property takeover? Okay, yes, I support the Eastern Corridor. I sat on the Eastern Corridor group from 1994 to 2005, I believe it was.
I've supported it. I continue to support it. I think that it is the most logical and most effective answer to the incredible traffic problems we're getting out of Miami and Union Townships. So I think that the development of both a highway route and the rail route is vital that we do that. As far as people getting a good shake from the state, as a commissioner, I would definitely fight for that. There are a number of issues that go around with preemption that the state can utilize to get property. And when you get that far, it's often bitter feelings. And so I would do what I can to make sure that we avoid going all the way to eminent domain before that happens, because often eminent domain is a bad deal for the individual owners and the individual homeowners. And one of the worst deals a homeowner can get is if he's just on the edge of eminent domain. They don't take that owner's property, but they really mess everything up from his property line on out. So these are issues that we need to look at. One of the ways to get around that is to make sure you have good planners. Clermont County has a plethora of professional and technical people to help us work our way around this routing before we actually go to putting a shovel in the dirt and digging it out. So I think that the most important thing I could do, is go around ahead of time and see what people want, what they need, and how this route will affect them. Now that we have all of this 3D imaging, it would be very easy to look at each person's property and find out how the proposed changes will affect their particular property. So I see that as something that's hard to do but not impossible.
Having lived in Clermont County all of my life, it is the perception that the county is run by the good old boys. What would you do to change that?
Well, getting elected would change it quite a bit, because I'm not one of the good old boys. So that would be my first activity, would just be showing up. The second thing I would do is I am very aware of the fact that everyone who participates in life in Clermont County should have a fair shot and a voice. So it is something that, since I believe that deeply in my bones, I would work to do that. And if I thought the good old boys were somehow or another coming to the fore, I am not at all above talking about it. I don't have any problems telling others, like the newspapers and the TV stations, etc., that I think something untoward is occurring. I agree with you. I have lived in Clermont County most of my life as well, and I am aware of the fact that there are times when you just have to scratch your head and say, what were they thinking? And usually it comes up they were thinking of themselves. And I'm not in it for this. I'm a retired person. I'm not going to make a career out of any of this stuff. I just want to make sure things work right. We have a whole generation of people coming behind us who deserve better than it looks like they may get otherwise.
As a faculty member at UC Clermont College, I'm concerned about jobs for our graduates. What will you do to provide opportunities to keep our students in Clermont County?
Well, one of the interesting things, if you'll pardon the joke here, is that everyone, when I came through school, I was a history major, and they ask you, gee, you're going to be a history major. What are you going to do for a living? And the answer is, you do what you can, because there aren't that many jobs as an historian, and I would imagine there aren't that many jobs as an English major. On the other hand, there are many, many jobs for people in the technical areas. One of the things I would do is I would encourage our high schools and our colleges to get more involved in what's called the STEM program. That is science, technology, engineering, math. They should be our core curricula. This should be, we should look into more effective ways of getting this information into the regular life. I mean, when I came through, everybody did word problems, and everybody hated them. The thing that will make your heart drop to your shoes the fastest is that question, if a train leaves Chicago going 45 miles an hour, when will it meet one leaving Cincinnati going 32 miles an hour? Those are the kinds of questions that we always have to work with, and they were terrible questions then, they're terrible questions now. There is life to be lived, and everything in life follows the rules of physics, follows the rules of chemistry, and we can broaden the ability to teach so that people not only teach math, but they include English in with it. I'm just thinking of, you talking of English, Shakespeare himself talks about, when he digs that skull out of the ground and says, "Alas, poor Yorick, I knew him well." That's a good time to look at things such as how long does it take a skull to be completely denuded of the flesh. I realize that's kind of a stretch as far as an example, but the point is there is very little that you do that cannot be made reference to some other area of science, math, technology, or engineering. We look at these wonderful roads. Somebody had to figure out where to put them. How did the Romans make their roads so straight? This is not only history, it is technology, and it's interesting to learn how people in the past did what they did. It's interesting to learn how, if you read Moby Dick, what you really learn about is how you did whaling in the 19th century. It is a treatise on whaling. There are any number of things. Thomas Pynchon's books go all over science. So it isn't something that is hard to do. As far as getting these people employed, in my heart of hearts, I believe, A, the life of the mind is the most important aspect of living. B, once we start getting people who are adept with knowledge, not just can they play games, but can they apply the knowledge they've learned, the jobs tend to come. As far as getting people here to actually hire them, that is something I would very much be interested in, because we need to expand business here in the county. We need to bring in new business here in the county. This is an area on the edge of, to me, on the edge of wonderful growth. We have the population, we have the resources, we have Clermont, both Clermont in Batavia and Clermont out further east. I think they call it UC East. But we have the schools, we have the school system, public schools, which turn out wonderful graduates. We just have to build on that and keep going. I don't have a 4-point plan because I don't know what the points would be just at this time. I have an attitude that says, look to develop these things, look to encourage growth, look to encourage education. Thank you.
I've been a small businessman in Clermont County for over 40 years. I've watched this county grow, but I've also watched the regulations of government grow to a point where they're hurting small business. What are you going to do to help eliminate some of the actual problems we're having with overregulations?
Well, I hear this fairly often, and I guess the first thing I would point out to you that the county commissioners don't have a lot of control over many of the regulations you are speaking of. Many of the regulations come from the state, other regulations come from the federal government, and some regulations are local. What we can do as commissioners is ask the various and sundry localities and ask the state to see where they can cut back and where they just don't need so much paperwork, because I can agree with the fact I had a small business myself for 17 years, and I understand that, you know, when you're a small businessman, your weekends are spent keeping up with the paperwork. That is not easy. But on the other hand, you can't really tell a restaurant, you don't have to clean everything every night. That's a regulation that you require. So many of the regulations we have are responses to dangers perceived to public health, dangers perceived to public trust, which is why we have all these tax regulations. I think the state did a wonderful thing in getting rid of the inventory tax. That was a killer. So it doesn't mean, you know, what it means is they are amenable to change, but they're slow to change. They're slow to give up control. As a commissioner, I would have to say I would do what I could, but I just cannot stand here or sit here and promise you that I can do anything, because the commissioners work as a mother may I outfit. That is, commissioners can only do what the state lets them do. And so if the state says you will not do thus and such, we don't do it. And at this time, the commissioners are primarily tasked with collecting taxes and dispersing funds on county contracts. So the regulations, I sympathize with you and I would work with you. I just don't think a commissioner can make promises that meet your hopes and expectations at this time. That's the state and federal level. Thank you.
What I want to know is how you're going to behave in handling your personal and work-related business.
That's a kind of a broad question. How am I going to handle in my personal life? I'm going to be the same guy I've always been. A personal business, I think what you're talking about is conflict of interest. And this is something that we should all be aware of and watch out for. It is terribly difficult not to see that a business opportunity is coming your way and not want to get your friends in on it or get in on it. This is human nature. That's one of the reasons I'm running, is that, in my opinion, the Republican Party has fallen down rather badly on this account, because they do watch out for themselves. And I think they get a little confused about what's good for the party may be good for the county. And I don't think that's something we can bank on at all times. So would I be aware of conflict of interest? Yes, I would. I don't have business contacts that I could or would alert to anything coming along. My personal life, well, gosh, I don't know what to tell you there. We are what we are. I'm a decent guy, I'm a moral guy, and I move ahead along those lines. I can't see stealing anything. I haven't stolen yet, and I don't think there's any reason that I would start becoming a county commissioner. I don't have any friends that I can shovel business off to, and I just don't live the kind of life that would put me in that sort of a temptation. But as far as conflict of interest goes, yes, I'm very aware of that, and I would keep an eye out for it. Thank you. Hi, my name is Len Harding, and I am running for County Commissioner in Clermont County. This is my first run at politics, and I did not actually set out to do that this year. The opportunity to run came about because of the problems that Archie Wilson had, and when he vacated the seat, the Republicans got to appoint someone, and then they got to appoint someone to run, and the Democrats were given the same opportunity. And they called me, and quite frankly, when I first heard the message, my wife thought it was a practical joke. But they indeed did mean it. Indeed, they meant it, I mean. And I am honored and quite surprised that I was asked to run. Now that I'm running, I realize that the honor was somewhat mixed with the anxieties of actually running a campaign and getting your name out there and finding out how little people care about you and who you are Only thing they're really interested in is, are you going to be a good person? And I think I'm a good person, and I hope that this comes across. I have lived in Clermont County most of my life. My family's been here since the 1880s. I have been here myself since the late 1940s. I was away for a while I went to college and lived a life. I moved back in 1987 and have been living in Milford ever since. I have been civically engaged, but not politically, for the last 20 years. And I think that I have a good grasp of how things work here. I know that I have the experience and the ability to deal with the problems that are out there. I'm very excited about some of the challenges because I myself am a greenie. I've been engaged in sustainable architecture, and I have done quite a bit of work with as a technical writer in all forms of technology. I've also taught. In fact, I've taught in every small college around here, from Chatfield College out in Brown County to the Lebanon Prison up in Warren County. So I know the area well. I had a small business here for 17 years. I left the business because I had to have more time at home to be with my daughter. So I got a job and became a writer, spec writer, for a number of years. Doing that, I spent 2.5 years from 2006 to 2009 in Las Vegas with the MGM Mirage City Center project, which is an $8 billion sustainable hotel complex. When I was out there, I absolutely enjoyed the work and hated the place. For those of you who may be interested, those of you who spend weekends in Clermont County and you like live music and live entertainment, you have a better deal than the people in Clark County, because the casinos suck up all of the venues, and anything that's left behind is just simply jukebox and electronic gambling. So you're much better off here than you would be out there. Other than that, I look forward to your support. I would appreciate your support, and I know I can do a good job, and I look forward to serving as your county commissioner. I don't have any plans to step from this job into newer, bigger, better jobs, and I don't intend to have a political career. I intend to be a good county commissioner. Thank you, and I hope for your support.
If you're going to vote early in Ohio by mail or in person, make sure you follow the directions to fill out the ballot completely so your vote will count. Tom McKee, 9 News in Batavia.